Welcome everyone to the General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group, our bi-weekly call. Today, slightly different setup. Your usual host, Vesa, is having a day off, so vacation. So that's why we with the other folks, the PnP crew, take over this call and kind of lead you through some cool content. We'll follow the usual agenda, so we'll give you an update on the latest on CSOM, PowerShell, Modernization. Then Chris Ken's Warrior Horses hopefully are there as well, and they have some nice list formatting tips for you. Next we have Velin showing us how to set up multiple environments in Azure DevOps. And finally, a really cool demo from Paolo around building an Electron application that calls back to SharePoint Online. And maybe we have time for Q&A, we'll see. Typically we don't have time, but maybe I talk faster than Vesa, so maybe there is. So with that being said, we would like you to participate in our community, to work with us. This is a forum also for you. Meaning if you have done something cool that you want to show, if you use a particular technique, you build a nice sample or solution that you want to show, just reach out to us, to any one of us, Patrick, Vesa, me, anyone of the team essentially, and just make us aware. And we put you on the agenda and you get 10, 15 minutes to talk about something, to show what you did, the cool thing that you did. So we'd really love to have those contributions for you guys coming in here and showing it. Contributing on GitHub, of course, many of you have done that in the past, so thanks for that. So keep doing that, keep up the good work, keep creating bugs, changes, etc. And provide feedback, of course. So feedback in form of issues or Twitter comments, whatever works. There's so many channels nowadays, but give us feedback. Let's move on to the next one. These are the usual slides, you've seen them before. Now, just a reminder, aq.ms/spdev-docs is our place for all documentation. Everything SharePoint developer related, all documentation can be found over there. This is also an open source platform, so essentially you can change documentation. So if you don't like what you see over there, make a change and create a pull request, and we can take your change in and improve our documentation. All the videos that we create, like all the meetings, the SIG calls are recorded, the monthly calls are recorded. We have additional videos that we create on a regular basis. They all end up on our YouTube channel, which you can reach via aq.ms/spdev videos. And finally, if you have an issue, a developer-related issue, so when talking about developer specifically related issues, not general SharePoint issues, but if it's developer related issue, please create an issue in the aq.ms/spdev issues list, which is our central issue list, which is triaged by product group and engineering. So this gets you the necessary attention for your issue. With that being said, let's move on to our quick update on PnP CSOM. So the PnP CSOM Core library is a central .NET utility library, essentially, that really makes it easy to work with SharePoint. It has grown from something quite small 3 years ago, to a really extended library with lots of functionality. And looking at CSOM, what will be coming? The version February release is out already for about 2 weeks now, and we're just in the middle between two releases. So within about 2 weeks, we'll release the March version. And for that one, we plan to have ALM support. So there is some pending pull requests that we still have to merge to get ALM support for SharePoint 2019. So pretty cool. So the first really SharePoint 2019 specific capability after we've enabled 2019 support. Another fairly cool thing is Azure AD credential flow authentication. So you might have customers today that have disabled the legacy auth in their tenant, because we made it quite easy. You go to your tenant administration, you can just check a box, and then legacy auth is disabled, which then implies that if you use a username and password, bang, it doesn't work anymore. It just blows up, right? Now, with this new Azure AD credential flow, you can still use username and password, but then we go to Azure AD and get an access token and kind of bypass the legacy auth problem. Well, when we built this, we stumbled upon an issue with our cloning method. So internally in SharePoint, in the CSOM Core library, we use a lot of cloning, where we kind of take one client context object for a particular URL and then create another client context for another URL. Now, cloning works great as long as you stay in the same audience. So let's say in my case, it would be like HTTPS birthline.sharepoint.com, and everything underneath birthline.sharepoint.com works great. However, if I would switch to birthline-my.sharepoint.com, for example, then it would fail. And essentially, we now built a solution for that, where the clone method is intelligent and does understand its context and can handle those situations. There's several smaller provisioning engine bug fixes done, and a small thing around double quotes in the client-side page title. So long-term, more SharePoint 2019 support. Web part connections in client-side pages API. There's an issue created for that, and yeah, I think it's something that we should work on to support that. And of course, the new schema support. Schema support has been kind of delayed a little bit because we are working on the provisioning service. Once the provisioning service gets released, we can further focus on the new schema. Going to PowerShell, let's see if we have Erwin in the call. No Erwin. Okay. So for PnP PowerShell, same release rhythm. Within 2 weeks, the new version. And better aligned to the changes in Sites Core, we have a better support in Connect PnP Online to authenticate to SharePoint with credentials when legacy auth has been turned off. We'll also make the apply PnP tenant template command a little bit more verbose. So when you apply PnP tenant template, it can mean that you create multiple site collections, join them in Hub. So it can do a lot of things, and will now also output that information to you after the creation. So you get some feedback in the console, what was created, essentially. And then you can pick up the output and do additional steps with that. And there's an issue that we fixed, a small issue in the Connect PnP Online with the SPO management shell parameter. So essentially, with the March release, you should be able to seamless authenticate even if legacy auth has been disabled. I think that's the key thing that we're working on and trying to achieve. Alrighty, and the third recurring topic here is modernization. So what happened in that space? For the next version, the March release, we'll have some pretty cool new things actually. So first one is an experimental support for transforming pages into another site collection. So essentially the scenario is that you have a team site or publishing portal or something with pages, and you transform that old page into a client-side modern page into a new site collection, for example, into a communication site. This is in its early stages. This is a community contribution from Paul Bullock. So thanks, Paul, for doing that. If you're on the call, and we plan to do some more work in that area to make this actually better, to have more features there, and like for example, we're thinking about if you have a page showing images, why not copy the images over to the target site collection if you go cross-site collection. Furthermore, we'll have some improved mappings for content editor and content by query web parts. More detailed mappings, more functionalities being mapped. Looking into offering transformation support for content by search. And the list view web part now supports a toolbar. So there's some background noise, so remember to mute yourself, guys. All right, thanks, Patrick. So the toolbar, so you do recall that if you put a classic web part, classic XT list view web part on a page, you can configure it to not show a toolbar. That option now is available for the modern list and library web part, and we enable now that we take over the setting if it's present. We're still working on the page transformation UI version 1, so that will have some more tenant level switches to control behavior, pages living in folder support, better item level copying, and multilingual support. These are the 4 areas that we plan to introduce in V1. And then actually also this week we released the Modernization scanner version 2.4. This scanner is 30 to 40% faster, even more depending on the scenario, just by optimizing the amount of calls going back to SharePoint. So we just used Fiddler and kind of really checked every operation, each call being made is needed, can we kind of group the calls, etc. So that gives it a nice performance improvement. Also packaging is kind of cleaner now, single exe, so the additional web part mapping file that was there is now as an embedded resource, and there's some minor UX improvements. Alrighty, I think that covers the default weekly update, but now let's go to our weekly Warrior Horses story. If it's still Warrior Horses, Chris, I'm not sure what you plan to show, but I think the
actually, Bert, Chris is having a bit of an issue with the horses. One of them has gotten loose, so he's trying to catch it. If we could skip him and go to somebody else on the demo. I don't know if Paolo is ready to go or Velin. We can come back to Chris closer to the end.
Yep. When Chris caught his horses again, then we can get back.
Can you hear me, guys?
Velin.
Yep.
Take it away. You can take over the screen and
okay. Let me just try to share.
Velin will show you how to set up multiple environments with Azure DevOps.
Right. Let me see. Can you see my screen? Just let me know when you see it.
Not yet. I'm still sharing. Okay, now I lost my sharing, so it's loading at my side.
I've got it on my side.
Yep, same here. All good. Velin, you're still on mute, so maybe if you unmute.
Sorry, guys. I just did my first light on mute. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Ah, great. Great. So let's continue. There you go. So the presentation is about how to set up multiple environments within your DevOps pipeline in an automated fashion here. So my name is Velin Georgiev, and I'm a SharePoint developer for a very long time. And I did a demo back in December on basics, how we could link GitHub with Azure pipelines. And this will be just a follow-up. So if you want to see the basics, you can go on that URL and then just watch the previous video, because I will skip a few things that I did there. But basically today we'll be talking about different environments. So it's nice to have at least 2 environments. You have your live site where you have all the coolest business features there and the users are using them. But on the other hand, you're building new features, half-baked code, and you might need a separate environment or a separate SharePoint site where you want to host that so you don't break the live environment. For today's demo, I'll just go with just a development environment and production environment, and I'll show you how you can automate that pipeline. And for the developer environment, we'll be using a communication site with site collection app catalog, so we can deploy our SharePoint framework solution there. And once we are happy with the code, so that will be deployed in an automated way. But once we are happy with our code, again in an automated way, we will move it here into the tenant app catalog that will serve the live or the production environment. Of course, that will require approval because we need someone like a release manager to push the trigger and say that's good to go. So because I don't have enough time, I'll go just try to the demo. So here we have a production environment, and this is my production side. It is pulling information from the global tenant app catalog, and as you can see, it's named production and it's greenish, so we can make a difference between the developer and the production. On the other hand, I have a production, I have a development environment here, or developer environment, or whatever you call it, and it has that blue look, so we can make the difference. But basically, this is my SharePoint framework solution, and this is my web part, and it's at version 13. So at the end, ideally, we'll increase the version to 14 in both environments, but I'll have to go to Azure DevOps here. So my source code is in GitHub again, and GitHub is linked with Azure DevOps, and I already have my build set up here. That means that, come on, work, fresh. Okay, very good. So our build here is already pre-set up, and I showed that on the previous demo. So if you're interested in creating your own build, as I said, you have to watch the previous demo. Here now we will be creating just a release pipeline. So what the build will do, it will build, bundle, and package our solution, and it will make it available on Azure DevOps after every new piece of code, after we commit a new piece of code in our source controls. That will basically build the package and make it available here. But that's not enough, because the package available here means nothing. We have to move it to our developer environment and our production environment after. So we have to configure those release pipelines here. So what I would do is I would say just a new pipeline, and I'll say an empty job, and this is stage 1. So my stage 1 will be my dev environment here, and as you can see, I have that stage 1 here, and I have another box here, and that is my where basically where my artifact is, where my SharePoint package is, and I have to select it. But because it is here in Azure DevOps, and I know that I can simply find it and point to the folder where that actually is. So this is my folder. And then once we have that artifact, we can move that artifact through the stages and create an automated way to move it all the way to my development site. But before that, I'll click on that icon and I'll just enable continuous deployment. So that means that whenever I commit a new piece of code into my master branch of the source control, it will trigger the build first, and once the package is available in Azure DevOps, the SharePoint framework package, then it will automatically move to the dev environment, which is using site collection app catalog. So here, on the other hand, I have to configure it up. So you can see 1 job and 0 tasks. And if you go here, you will see a build agent or a release agent. Basically, this is our release VM. And we have to set up a few more steps to make it so it can deploy our package to the site. So first thing I have to do is I have to install Node.js. Why Node.js? Because I'll be using the Office 365 CLI, and because it's a Node.js application, I need that installed on my machine. The second thing to do is to install my, just execute a bash command, and within that bash command, I will use a bash script that I've created in my source control. And I'll show you that script, but that script is available within my artifacts here. So I'll just select it, and I'll go and just quickly demo the script for you. So This is how the script looks. It's in my source control, so that's my SharePoint framework solution. I have a DevOps folder, then a release folder, and I have a bunch of scripts that will help me release my web part. And on top here, we have 4 parameters that we will set up within Azure DevOps. And then we install the CLI tool, we output the version, then we log in with using credentials, and then we say SPO app. This is a command that will try to find that package in Azure DevOps, and it will try to deploy it to an app catalog. And of course, we have to specify the scope. So these are dynamic variables here. After that package is uploaded in the app catalog, we'll have to execute SPO app deploy, and this will deploy it, and it will make it available. Like the new changes will immediately pop up and be available on the site, so the web parts will change. With that flag here, skip feature deployment, means that it will skip the feature XML, and we don't have to do additional install or anything, so it will immediately deploy it and make it available. The web part will immediately be available with all the new changes we do. Here on the other side, we have a PowerShell analog. So in those demos, I'll try to keep CLI version, PowerShell version. So you get the idea what it's about in PowerShell, but in PowerShell is almost the same. You have some parameters here, and then you try to log into the site catalog and with some credentials, and the command to add the app is add PnP app. Again, where your solution is in Azure DevOps, scope, and publish. So publish will pretty much do what that command here is doing for the CLI. But for our demo, I'll be using the CLI because it's a little bit easy to install. As you can see here, I'm missing a piece of a script where you have to make the PowerShell module available for your release agent, and I haven't done that here. But that step is okay here, so we can install the CLI easily and run it. So I'll be using the CLI here. So there you go. That's my bash script here, but that bash script takes 4 arguments. So I have to specify those 4 arguments here, and they will look like that. And as you can see, that weird syntax here, that means that I'll pull them from somewhere, and we have a section here on top called variables. And if I set up a variable called cited there, it will know, using that syntax, it will know to pull it from there. So I'll just put all my details here. So this is the first parameter, cite. There's a second parameter, my email, so I can authenticate. Sorry. There you go. Then there's a third parameter, which is a password, and I'll keep it a private field, encrypted. And the last one was scope. And the scope is site collection. Why site collection? Because we are still trying to deploy to our dev environment. So I'll save, and I'll show you that that URL points to site collection app catalog within my dev environment, and I have to specify that scope so the CLI knows to deploy it there. Now we're done with our dev stage here, but now once we are happy with our dev and all the features are working for our solution, then we can move it to production. For that, I'll just clone that one, and I'll create another stage, and I'll call it production. Okay. And here we will have pretty much the same setup. It's the only difference here is I have to specify different parameters here because we will be deploying to the tenant app catalog. So for me to change that, I'll go to the variables, and as you can see here, we have a scope. So I can easily say that will work under my dev whenever I'm releasing to dev, and I can have the same variables here, but with just different values. And I need scope, and that scope will be tenant. And this will work for the prod stage where I'm deploying to prod. I think we should be good. And these are shared. So I'll be using them for both. I'll just save. And the last piece that I should do here is to change, like there is a setting here that's called pre-deployment approval. So I'll try to enable that because you don't want half-baked code or non-approved code to go to your production environment. And here I will be the approver, so nothing goes in without my approval. This in case you need a release manager, someone or product owner, someone to approve that before that goes live. So with that, I think we are ready to test our environment, and I'll immediately go and change something in my code. So because it will take some time to, so I'll change the version from 13 to 14, and we'll see that change in the title of my web part, and I'll commit it. Say git changed to v14. I'll push that to my source control, and that should trigger the build, hopefully. Let's see. So everything's saved. There's my build. We're still waiting, but hopefully that should start soon. Okay. Pushed that, so it says pushed to master. So we are waiting Azure DevOps to start my build. Version 15. There you go. Nothing happens. That's interesting. Was supposed to fire a new build here. Oh, there you go. So version 15 succeeded. Version 14, for some reason, couldn't. But I don't have enough time to troubleshoot, so we're good to go with that one. So we'll update our web part to version 15, and our build is running, and let's see what is happening. Hopefully, the whole build will succeed, and we might have to wait a little bit here to install all the packages, but then it will build the SharePoint framework solution, and it will make it available in Azure DevOps. After the build is done, it will run the release. And because we enabled the automated deployment here, the continuous deployment, it will try to move it immediately to our dev environment. That means that when I refresh my blue web part here, it should change to version 15, and my green web part should remain on version 13 because that's been deployed only to my development environment. Let's see how this goes. So the build might take a while, and while this is running, I'll show you a few more steps. Like the different organizations have different requirements. So here in between, you might have QA environment, stage environment, UAT environment, whatever environment, and you can configure all these step by step here. You can run things in parallel as well. So you can say a new stage and create a new stage running in parallel here, which is also handy in case you want to deploy your SharePoint framework solution from one stage here, from one stream, and you want to do something with backend code in Azure in another stream. So loads of options for you to play with here. I'm just showing the basic scenarios so you can get the idea how you can easily configure those too. Now, let's see what happens with the build. Still running. Almost there. Package solution. And in a few seconds, we will be just there to have a look at our release and how this will be triggered. I will just refresh. Hopefully that should start soon. Okay, still running. Already done. So the release should be triggered by now. And here, if I refresh now, I should say that the release is here and it says in the queue and production is not deployed. We can click in on that URL or here and get a little bit more details of what's going on. So as you can see, it's already running, so it found an available machine. You have nice graphics here to show you that something's happening for a fix, but you also have a log here. So we can go here and see what is happening, but basically we're waiting to install Node.js and then run our bash scripts. And if I've done everything correctly on the variables part, that should just deploy the package to my dev environment. Okay, almost there. So here you go. So that means that the package is already on the dev side. But to save some time, I will trigger the same thing here and I will show you the result after. As you can see, I have an approve button here. So someone has to approve that before it moves to the production environment. But I'll just click the approve button and let it run. And while this is running, I'll move back to my site to show you that the version here actually changed to 15. So that's my developer environment, and that should remain the same because we are waiting. We're waiting on approvals, we're waiting for a code, and a developer broke the code, or a missing horse is not here, or whatever, and right after everything is fixed, we will move here. But because I approved it, it should be already there. So 5, 6, almost there. Good. By now, I'll just refresh and still running. 7 of 7. Okay, that should be okay. So if I refresh now, we should see the new version deployed to production as well. There you go. So that's with me. Maybe next time we'll talk about different configurations for the different environments, because this is also something that is a must-have. You usually have different variables that you have to call depending on your different environments. But that's with me. Thanks.
Thanks, Velin. I think this is a very useful solution and does apply to most of us in the call. So thanks for sharing it. Chris, are the warrior horses back on track, or should Paolo go first?
Yeah. We can go for it.
All right, you can take over the screen now.
All right, let's see. Share my screen here. Let me know when you guys see it. Back on track. Ha! Hilarious. A lot of horse jokes. It's getting out of hand. All right, it's getting crazy. All right, can you guys see it? You see what we got here?
It's loading.
All right.
I can see.
All right. So, contrary to the published agenda, I will not be discussing alternating rows. You can go check out the sample. It is available. There's a blog post on it. But there is an issue this morning that's preventing that from working. So, good news. We got something else for you. All right. Let's take a look at it. There we go. Switch back. Oh, by the way, I'm Chris Kent. That's me. That's my picture. There's my Twitter tweets and all that stuff. All right. Let's take a look at what we're talking about today. So, I want to talk about the column formatting design mode. We talk a lot about JSON and all the fantastic and cool stuff you can do with that. But right now there is some nice little wizards that are directly in the UI. If you guys haven't seen these are a great place to start. They're also a great place to learn what's being done behind the scenes, and you can customize from there. So you get these kind of options for date-time columns, choice columns, and yes-no columns, including the calculated version. So if you've set your calculated columns to be of a type of date-time or of a Boolean yes-no, these will show up as well and work for you. So what happens is when you choose these, you choose that format column. We'll take a look at that. You get this edit template button, and when you click that, they all pretty much work the same way. You can pick one of these pre-selected classes here for colors. You can apply those based on certain values, and there's some cool options there. And the nice thing is, because of the opacity that's a part of these, they work very well in the dark theme. So you don't have to do any kind of adjustments there. They're just going to work. They are not tied to your theme colors, however. So if you want to tie them to your theme colors, that's a whole different discussion, which we can talk about here. And at any time, you can switch it back to JSON, including all the changes you made in the wizard. So here's the predefined classes we've had for quite a while. If you guys have seen these, so we got all the severity classes, which really just set a background color. You've got the data bars, which creates that nice little line at the top, and that is theme specific. And then you've got these other ones here. And as always, I highly recommend using the UI fabric, color, and typography classes to match the theme. So again, if you're wanting to use some of these, you can use these to kind of set up design mode, and then you can swap out those classes with some of these theme classes, which we'll take a look at. And last thing to note, really helpful naming conventions behind the scenes, is all of these colors are actually classes themselves. So they have really catchy names like SP-CSS-background color-neutral background 50. So everyone's going to remember that, right? And you'll notice that the blue background does not follow the same naming convention, so extra awesome there. But at any time, you guys can use these. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, here we go. Back over. Oh, no! I can't see my tabs. There we go. Okay, so we're over here on our Warrior Horses site. Right, we want to just do some quick customizations to our new asset transcripts. All right, so come over here. We can do things on the dates. So we say the recorded date. If we come here to format this column, we don't get that same box we get on the others. We can always get to it by hitting advanced mode, and we can paste our JSON here, and we can take from any of those samples over here. But instead, I'm going to go back to design mode. So all I do is I hit edit template, and notice I immediately get these fancy colors behind the scenes. All right, and they're all based off of today, which won't surprise you. That's the @now magic string behind the scenes. Right, I could choose to change that to certain colors. It's pretty easy to customize all this however I need to. All right, I can take a look here. I can also switch this, so instead of today, I could put a specific date. All right, so if I want to say, which one, tomorrow, right? We can do that, and I can switch all these around. So there's some real power to this. All right, and at any time, I can say advanced mode. All right, and you can see what's been generated for us. So it's basically a giant switch statement, but it's using the old abstract syntax tree. So we've got the operator and the operands, right? You may not have known that you could use the colon instead of the question mark. They're both equivalent. But you come down here and you can start to see where they're using these classes, like right here, SP, CSS, background color, neutral background 30. Again, very classy. But if I wanted to switch that out, right, so I wanted to go to SP field, severity, severe, I don't know, a warning? That sounds right. Let's preview that. It's not right, so we'll just go warning. Boom. Yeah, there we go. So the idea here is you could easily swap it out to those colors if I wanted. Right, if I wanted to come in here, instead I wanted to say MSBG color red dark. All right, we could do that as well. And you can start to see we can start to use those theme classes. All right, if I didn't want to use red dark, I could certainly say theme primary. And I get my nice beautiful brown, and so on. All right, so you can begin to use these things for all that. You can switch back to design mode. It's going to warn me that it's going to lose all that. But then I can go back in there. Now, so that's for date times, right? But we can come over here. We also have the exact same thing for booleans, right? So let's get rid of that. Come over to compromise, was the asset compromise. We can format this column. You can see it's the exact same kind of thing, a few less options in terms of what you could choose here, but I can use the nest no, all that. And then I can also do the exact same thing for choices. So if I've got my status over here, so just format this column, you notice it gives me all different shades of blue. Thanks. Right, but again, I can come in here and I can switch those out as well. Now, one thing to note, let's go ahead and hit apply on that. We'll keep one, is that will not work for your multi-choice columns, right? So it'll act like it's going to. So you format this column, you come in here, you'll notice none of these work unless they were single select. Now, if you'll go back to our demo from 2 weeks ago, that recording there, we showed you how to deal with multi-select choice columns, so you'll have to get a little more advanced, but the design mode's not going to work. All right. Yeah, well, good. I'm glad someone remembered it. That's good. Someone paid attention. It's very exciting. And the other thing to note is, again, we've got this date. This is a calculated date. It's 2 days later, so it's just a calculation. But you could do the exact same thing. So it does not matter that this is a calculated value. For a long time, calculated values have not been supported. In fact, they're listed as not supported still. However, there are a couple of minor limitations, but for the most part, you can reference all calculated columns. You can apply formats to all calculated columns, and even the out-of-the-box wizards apply to calculated columns. So that actually opens up a lot of possibilities to do some of those advanced formulas that you may not have been able to do before. In fact, we just had a sample added yesterday from April that uses a calculated column specifically to manipulate date text to get an exact format she wanted. So check that out. That's our birthday format that was just added. All right, that's all I got for today, and hopefully when we come back next time, we'll have maybe some alternating rows to show you. Okay, thanks, Gav.
All right, cool. Cool, Chris. Another episode in the Warrior Horses saga. So looking forward to the next one, actually. So with that, let's move to Paolo for our last demo on the Electron. Paolo, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you, Bert. I'll take over the presentation. So let me share my screen, and please let me know when you see it. So sharing. Hopefully. Looks like I cannot share. Let me try again. Okay, share. Okay, now it is working. Let me know when you see it, please.
It's loading.
Oops, without the Skype for Business window, of course.
We're all praying.
I've got it on my end.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about how to create a Electron.js app which can access SharePoint Online. First of all, let me set a little bit the context. So when we talk about Electron.js, what do we mean? What is Electron.js? Well, Electron.js is an open source library developed by GitHub. So actually now we can say developed by Microsoft, but that's just a side note. And it's built on top of Chromium and Node.js. And you can use it to create HTML and JavaScript based applications which can be executed on desktop platforms like Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. So it is really powerful and useful whenever you need to create cross-platform desktop solutions, and whenever you want to reuse your knowledge, as long as you know how to create an HTML and JavaScript application. Moreover, it's pretty easy to use Electron.js to release applications that can be easily deployed on the target environment of the end users, as well as easily updated whenever you have an updated version of your desktop app that you want to release. From a tool chain perspective, developing Electron.js applications can be done. This is just one set of options, but can be done using Visual Studio Code and TypeScript language, as well as using React or Angular or the framework of your choice. Personally, being an SPFX developer, a SharePoint framework developer, I like to use TypeScript and React within Visual Studio Code to build Electron.js solutions. And maybe you're wondering if there are any real applications built with Electron.js. And well, the answer is pretty easy. There are about a little bit more than 600 applications built with Electron nowadays. And in the list of those applications, we can find Visual Studio Code, just to make an example, or Microsoft Teams, the desktop app of Microsoft Teams, as well as the Slack desktop client. So there are plenty of real business applications built using Electron. And that's why, personally, I'm using, and I started using Electron for such kind of desktop applications for my customers. However, being the fact that I am a SharePoint guy, usually when I develop solutions, I need to use content which is stored in SharePoint, most likely SharePoint Online, as the repository for my data. And having the capability to create a desktop solution which can be multi-platform, cross-platform, and can easily consume data in SharePoint Online, I think it's a very good opportunity, and it's a real challenge for building a real business level solutions. Moreover, as I said, if you are a SharePoint framework developer, and most likely you are because you are attending this call, as a SharePoint framework developer, you will be able to reuse most of the knowledge that you have and that you put in place when you create SharePoint framework solution, also when you create Electron.js solutions. However, if you want to consume SharePoint Online, as usual, and luckily, we have to face some security and authorization and authentication challenges, because in order to access the content that we have in SharePoint Online, of course, we need to authenticate and to have proper authorization in order to get the content out from SharePoint. We most likely, we all know that under the cover of Office 365, we have Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory supports Open Authorization 2.0, and the way to go to have access, to have a secure access to SharePoint Online through an Electron application is to leverage the Open Authorization protocol offered by Azure Active Directory. So now I will show you a solution, which is a real solution, which we developed for one of our customers, and that's why I will start from the customer requirements. The customer wanted and wants to have a solution which is a kind of an application launcher, a desktop application launcher, cross-platform, of course, and they want to use this application to start all of the tools, all of the apps that they use on their desktop environment, but they want to have a unique repository for the whole list of apps that they want to launch through the app launcher. They want to have authorization based on their Active Directory and on their Azure Active Directory. This customer has a federation in place, so they have an Azure Active Directory on-prem and they are federated with Azure AD. And they wanted to use exactly the same user account and the single sign-on experience provided by the federation while accessing the app launcher, still having authorization filters so that every single user will be able to see just and only the applications that he is allowed to launch and to see in the app launcher. And moreover, or last but not least, the customer also said that from a requirements perspective, they wanted to have a nice and modern UI for their app launcher and not something really old school with the classic Windows Form UI or something like that. So the proposed solution that we created and that I will show you in a matter of few seconds from now is a solution that stores the app launcher items in a SharePoint Online list, so that by using a collection of items in a list, we can use the SharePoint authorization rules and the access control lists of SharePoint to filter items based on the currently connected user. Moreover, using SharePoint Online and Azure AD, we can make it possible for the end users to have a smooth experience because they will leverage the single sign-on that they have through ADFS and through the federation that they have in place. Moreover, we decided to use Electron.js, of course, and we are using Electron.js because through Electron we have a cross-platform support, and we decided to use React to build the UI component that we use to render the app launcher. And again, last but not least, we are using the Open Authorization 2.0 endpoint of Azure Active Directory to create the authorization and authentication flow within the Electron.js application. So that said, now that you have the context, and actually I don't know how many of you already know and use Electron.js, most likely you know, but not necessarily you use it. That's why I decided to have a small context before moving to the demo. But now I will move to the demo environment and I will show you the solution in practice as well as some code excerpts of these solutions. Just for the sake of completeness, this is the URL for Electron.js project if you want to dig into it. And this is the SharePoint Online site. The customer is based in Italy as I am, so sorry for the UI in Italian language, but most likely you can get what is the meaning of all the items you see. And here we have a list of items that we want to launch using the app launcher. We have a title, we have a description, an icon, and stuff like that. On the other side, we have a Visual Studio Code project for our Electron.js solution. Let me first of all start the project so that you will be able to see the UI of the application first and then the code under the cover. So let me start it. And as you can see, I have the sign-in UI I'm not a user with a federated account because I'm outside of their domain, so I have to do an explicit authentication, but still I can authenticate using Azure Active Directory. I will use my credentials in the customer tenant. They have ADFS, as you can see, so I have to provide my credentials to their ADFS authentication front end, and I have to wait for the two-factor authentication code, which hopefully will come in a matter of few seconds. Okay, got it. So 424642 again. Luckily, it is a one-time password. So now I'm in. I will not save my user access token because I want to use different credentials needed. And as you can see, this application now provides with a UI which you can like or not, it's up to you, but it's not the real topic of this demo. Here we can see a bunch of groups of icons. Actually, in my account, I have all of them, but a real user will just see a small amount of icons. And they can start the application by clicking on them and launching the apps that are running under the cover of every single icon that we have in the app launcher. But I don't really care about the application by itself, and I want to move to the source code. Just for the sake of completeness, here we have the developer toolbar because I am in the developer context, and you can see, you can appreciate the fact that under the cover there is a real HTML application which is running inside the Chromium platform in the Electron.js solution. So let me close this application, and this is the source code of the Electron.js app. Well, I will not dig into all of the details of the Electron.js app because this is not a demo about how to build an Electron solution from scratch. But just for the sake of clarity, I have an index.html page which I load in a JavaScript file, and this index.html page is made up of the HTML code which will render the UI that we just saw, and there is a div which I will use to replace it with a custom React component which I have in this app.tsx file. And this custom React component, as you can see, is like as you are used to doing when you develop SharePoint Framework solutions, for example, has its own properties, its own state, and all the other stuff that as a React component you maybe are used to seeing. And I render the component inside the div element that I have in the HTML that we just saw. Moreover, in this React component, when the component got mounted, I simply make a request using the inter-process communication of Electron.js to make an Azure Active Directory login. This AAD login request will go to a inter-process main event handler called AAD login, as the one we are using in the React component. And here we simply use the implicit flow of open authorization inside this application to make the authentication flow in the application. So we use login.microsoftonline.com, we use the open authorization endpoint, we connect to the authorize endpoint, we provide a bunch of settings for the application, including the client ID, including the resource that we want to access, which is SharePoint Online, and you can clearly see it in the settings of the application. In the collection of resources, we have the Microsoft Graph as well as the SharePoint Online resource that we want to consume. Once we have the URL for an implicit flow request, we simply create a browser window within the context of Electron. We render that window on the screen, and we wait for the window to get a redirect to the redirect URL that we provided during the authentication flow. And once we have done that, we can get back from the query string of the response the access token that we can use to connect to SharePoint Online. And in fact, we store the access token in a global variable that we have, so that later on we can say, okay, still using the inter-process communication, call the SPO refresh data action. And again, we have another event on this side which will be fired, and we will make an HTTP request for the URL of SharePoint Online, for the REST APIs of SharePoint Online to get the specific list that we have in target and the items in that list. And as we are used to doing whenever you use the REST API of SharePoint Online, we make a GET request for the items. We provide the authorization header of type bearer with the access token, and we accept a JSON response so that we will get back the collection of items to render using an access token which will include the context of the currently connected user, and so the response will be filtered based on the currently connected user, and we can just return the collection of items which will be rendered in the React component in the UI of the application. In order to be able to do that, of course, we had to register the application in Azure Active Directory. And in fact, we have that launcher application registered in the AAD tenant of our customer, and in the manifest file of this AAD application, we enable the implicit flow, as you can see here, of to allow implicit flow equal true, as well as, of course, in order to being able to access SharePoint Online in the required permissions, we had to declare that we wanted to access, at least in read-only mode, the content of the site collections with a delegated permission request. So, pretty straightforward. You create an Electron.js application. You leverage at the low level, I would say, the OAuth implicit flow, as well as the REST APIs of SharePoint Online, providing the access token, and that's it. You can interact, you can communicate with SharePoint Online from a desktop application built with Electron.js. And that's it on my side as well. So we have a few minutes, 3-4 minutes for Q&A if needed.
Thanks, Paolo. So looking at the chat window, Paolo, there's one question from Russell, and he's asking, like, when you saw the screen with all the tiles where you can launch applications, the applications that you launch, are they all web applications, or can the tool also launch an application which is locally installed on the machine?
Can be applications which are locally running on the machine, because actually you can do that when you run the desktop application, and we have an IPC function that we use to do that. So, for example, you can launch another desktop app running on the machine. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. So there's kind of a connection to the actual host running the generic Electron app.
Yeah, if you think about that, when you are in Visual Studio Code or when you are in Teams or in Slack, you can do the same. So
yeah, indeed. Just looking at the other questions. It doesn't run on iOS. I think there was a discussion there.
No, Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. The IPC main class comes from Electron.js, so if you dig into the documentation of Electron.js, you will find that IPC main is provided through the out-of-the-box infrastructure. The inter-process communication is provided by the out-of-the-box infrastructure of Electron.js.
There's a question, is there a link for the sample? Probably not, because it's something from a customer, so I can...
Precisely. I had the customer allowed me to show the sample, but of course I cannot share the source code of the sample. I'm thinking about building something like that, maybe something easier than that, just for the sake of sharing a sample solution, but not very soon, I think. And unfortunately, this is a project that we built for a real customer, so we cannot share it. Sorry about that.
That makes sense. But I think there's enough resources around Electron, and there's also a lot of documentation around how to authenticate to SharePoint Online using Azure AD, and yeah. But having a simple sample would help in the future. Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm. My personal next step on this topic will be to being able to use PnP JS rather than a low-level REST request. So I plan to work on it in the upcoming month, but
good thing.
Still has yet to come. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna meanwhile share the screen again.
Yep.
So we can do the closing slides, if my sharing will work, because I see all black boxes in Skype now. So that's typically not a good sign, but. And let's see. All right, due to an error, blah, blah, blah. No, it won't work for me.
Loading here, so maybe, no, still loading my screen. Nice.
It's not. Let me try once more. Otherwise, loading. All right, seems to work. I think. I hope. Anyone see the screen?
Yeah, got it.
Good. So we are at the hour. We had a little bit of time for Q&A. Still not that as much as we might have hoped to, but so thanks for being in the call. Where is my slides? So next call will be on March 7th, the next SharePoint Development Special Interest Group, within 2 weeks. But next week there's already the SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group, next week Thursday. So all welcome over there as well. Patrick and Vesta will be your host then. Mm-hmm. And to wrap up, learn, reuse, share. That's all we need to do. Thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.